What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Doing a little Steelers-Bengals preview. Only 3 games left in the regular season. Pretty much do or die time for both these teams, especially the Steelers, who are now 7-7. The Bengals come into this one 8-6. Both teams kind of vying for wild card spots. The Steelers pretty much at this point in the season going to need to win out and get help to make the postseason. Obviously, coming off 3 straight losses, everything's kind of trending in a downward spiral at this point. Cincinnati, they're going to come into Acrisure Stadium, I'm sure, pretty motivated because even their schedule in the next couple of weeks is pretty difficult. They got to go on the road to face the Steelers team, then they got to travel to Arrowhead to play Kansas City before they wrap up with the Cleveland Browns. So there's a lot on the line on this one. We'll kind of, as usual, preview the game, talk a little bit about the Bengals, talk a little bit about the previous matchup just a month ago. Lots changed since then, but go over that matchup. And then, per usual, we'll start with some injury stuff for the Steelers. We've talked at length about, just their issues kind of along the spine of the defense. A lot of injuries at the linebacker spot, safety spot. Micah Fitzpatrick's going to be out this week. Trenton Thompson is also out. Sounds like Elijah Riley is going to play. So that's going to give them one more body kind of on the back end to kind of use to kind of fill that void. But Minka especially, has had some trouble staying healthy this season. Just some really unfortunate injuries. Seems like just one thing after another. But and then Kenny Pickett's obviously out as well, still dealing with the ankle. It sounds like he's going to push to play next week, just based on what I understand. But we'll have to see. And Mason Rudolph's going to get his first start over the last 2 seasons against the Bengals. So for Cincinnati, really the only injury to note is Jamar Chase. He's out with the shoulder. We all know Joe Burrow out for the season. He's done. Jake Browning still holding down the quarterback spot for Cincinnati. Jamar Chase, obviously a huge loss. Even in the games that the Steelers have kind of controlled him a little bit or limited the exposure to him, still one of the best receivers in the National Football League. Not having him out there is going to be critical. It's kind of a weird theme. We'll talk a little bit about T. Higgins here in a little bit, but the Steelers just, for whatever reason, the way that the schedule has played out, they just haven't seen Jamar Chase and T. Higgins on the same field at the same time. Like one of those guys just always seems to miss these games, which definitely helps for sure. So let's talk a little bit about. We'll start with the Bengals offense. Watched the tape last week against the Vikings. Was pretty impressed with Jake Browning. It wasn't perfect, wasn't completely clean, if you will. There were still some mistakes, some turn downs. But I think that just having watched him a little bit in a live setting and then having watched him and studied him when he played the Steelers just a month ago, looks much more comfortable within the flow of the offense. If you just look at the last 3 weeks, the Bengals are averaging over 30 points per game. They are second in EPA per play behind only the San Francisco 49ers, who are on basically like a historic pace at this point on offense. And then they're fourth in success rate behind the Niners, the Ravens, and the Cowboys. So you look at a team that's absolutely humming on offense. And that largely that is due to, Browning just playing within the flow of the offense better. Thought he was really good last week in terms of knowing when to check the ball down. He hit some killer throws on some high lows. And then we also saw, the typical Bengals stuff where the receivers just kind of go bonkers. T. Higgins made a couple fantastic catches last week. That touchdown catch that he had to send the game into overtime where he pretty much comes back on the underthrown ball, mosses the cornerback, and then somehow gets the ball in the end zone. A fantastic play. I wrote about Higgins for SteelersNow.com. If you haven't checked that out, please do so. But he's a guy who's had some monster games against the Steelers in the past. He's only really played them 4 times, but he's went over 100 yards in 3 of those last year, if you remember. The one time that we saw him against the Steelers secondary, he ripped off like 9 catches, 148 yards. One thing that the Bengals did do with him that I expect to see again on Saturday, tomorrow, is they moved him into the slot a lot. So Pittsburgh, of course, a very man-heavy defense, especially in passing situations. So the Bengals wanted to get him in the slot to where they would run a lot of crossers, a lot of in-breakers, and he just really feasted on those matchups. Of course, no Arthur Maulette in this one. We get a little bit different of a kind of personnel grouping on the back end, but there's still some questions because the Steelers secondary is going to be featuring some new names. Sounds like the starting safeties are probably going to be Eric Rowe and Patrick Peterson. Who knows what that's going to look like? I mean, literally anybody's best guess. Peterson played some safety last week. I think he's a very smart player, obviously savvy, been around a long time. But who knows the trickle down effect that that's going to have? The deep shots down the field have to keep plays in front of you, obviously. But with Peterson not playing in the slot, who does that job kind of roll down to? Is that Elijah Riley? Are they going to play Chandon Sullivan there? Like, is that going to be kind of a rotating door, or are they just going to have Porter follow Higgins all the way around the field? I don't really know what the solution is. I personally would probably have Porter just travel with Higgins all over and then say, Browning did a good job last week of distributing the ball around. I want to say like close to like a dozen players had targets. I mean, he really did a good job of just understanding to not force the ball into specific guys or whatever. But I would probably just live with, all right, if you're going to have Tyler Boyd or any of these other backups, Trenton Irwin, Charlie Jones, any of those guys, if they're going to beat me, they beat me. So, but what the discipline is on defense, maybe it's more zone coverage in general. I don't know. But just it's going to be really interesting to see. One thing about the last matchup, if you remember, Joe Mixon just could not get anything going on the ground. They abandoned the run pretty early just because they couldn't get any displacement up front. The Steelers did a really good job clogging the line of scrimmage. They won in the trenches. That's something that they didn't do last week, in particular against the Colts. We talked at length about that on Steelers Now as well. I was really disappointed just with the overall physicality on both sides of the ball in the trenches last week. Something that absolutely has to improve. You look at this Bengals offensive line, they're playing a little bit better, I feel like, but I still feel like the Steelers have the advantage across the board. And if they're going to win this game, especially with all the injuries at the linebacker and safety spot, they're absolutely going to have to dominate up front. And for the most part, I felt like in the first matchup, they made Browning really uncomfortable. He was trying to do a lot of scrambling, a lot of playing outside of, the realm of his skill set. But, over the past couple of weeks, like I said, he's played better ball, and I think you have to respect that. So, yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the defensive side of the ball. Like I said, this Bengals team averaging over 30 points per game. They've been a top 5 offense the last 3 weeks. They're humming on that side of the ball. Been really impressed with Zach Taylor, his play calling, how he's adjusted the offense to do some things, press some easy buttons for Jake Browning. But having said that, on the defensive side of the ball, they're still playing like crap. It just is what it is. Like we talked about it in the first matchup that the Steelers are going to have some opportunities to move the football because this Bengals defense has been one of the more disappointing units I feel like in the league this year. Not that I expected them to be a top 5, top 6 team, but I anticipated that the Bengals were going to be somewhere around above average, and that just has not been the case really over the course of the season. Just even if you look at the past couple of weeks, they're 26th in EPA per play, they're 26th in success rate. Still, teams are moving the ball. I mean, Nick Mullins threw for 300 some yards last week, and I'm not sure if you guys have watched a lot of Nick Mullins, but I don't really think he's a very good quarterback. So, Mason Rudolph getting his first start. Still the same exact defense from Lou. You guys can go back and watch the previous preview, talk about the coverages and all this different stuff. But one thing with Mason Rudolph, absolutely have to take care of the football. One of the biggest reasons that the Steelers have been losing games is that they just, for one, the defense is no longer playing well. They're 25th in EPA per play over the course of the losing streak. And then they haven't won the turnover battle. They're not getting turnovers. I think they've only gotten 1 turnover in the last 3 weeks. And then Trubisky's turned the ball over at really inopportune times. There's been just some really sloppy mistakes on offense, receivers quitting on routes, miscommunications, all the stuff that you kind of expect from a miscommunication standpoint when you're rotating a bunch of new quarterbacks in. That stuff just cannot happen this week. One thing that the Bengals did lean into a little bit in the last matchup that I'm interested to see if it pops up again. They had some success with some drop 8 stuff. I think I did like a 40-minute Kenny Pickett film room on the channel. So you guys can go back and watch that to just see some coverage stuff. But the Steelers really, they started to kind of get some answers for that as the game went on. They torched them whenever they went split safety. They were seeing a lot of like cover 2, cover 6, middle open coverages. Freiermuth had the best game of his career. I thought Kenny Pickett had the best game of his career because of that. They were able to attack the seams, attack the hole shots down the middle of the field. We'll see if that's going to be the game plan. Of course, Mason Rudolph a little bit different of a quarterback. We will see. I mean, it's hard to know what to really expect with him, just because he hasn't really played an actual game. I think the Cleveland game, a couple years ago, 2-3 years ago, the finale, that was the last time we saw him in the regular season. And then it's kind of ironic. It's about a 2019, the Bengals game. I was actually at that game. He was benched at halftime because he wasn't playing very well. Steelers went on to win. Duck just come in, whatever. That was a crazy season in general. But Uh, really good chance for him. I totally agree with the decision to move away from Trubisky. I don't think that Mitch mechanically and from a confidence standpoint right now can play the quarterback position. I don't know what it is, but he's not. You can't put him out there, and I totally agree that they just have to try something, even if Rudolph isn't a significant upgrade. If you just get a little bit more down to down consistency, I think it's worth it. So we'll see. I do think the Steelers are going to have some opportunities on the outside. Cam Taylor Britt's been banged up. He's not been playing. They're still playing DJ Turner, Chidobe Awuzie, Mike Hilton in the slot. One thing that the Steelers had success with the last matchup, they got a big play by putting George Pickens in the slot, getting that size advantage on Mike Hilton. So we'll have to see if that comes up again. But this is the Bengals team too that has been bashed over the course of the season just against the run. I mean, I think they're allowing like 4.7 yards per attempt. That's 31st in the National Football League. It's just really bad. If you look just at some of their numbers, even beyond that, advanced numbers over the course of the season, 26th in rushing EPA, 28th in success rate. Now, no DJ Reader, who unfortunately suffered what looked like a significant injury. I don't actually know what if he's like how healthy he is or what. I'm assuming that was probably a season ender for him. I didn't actually look at his status, but he's one of their better run defenders, especially locking out, shedding guys in the middle. He's not going to be playing. So one of the things that I've always kind of said about their edge rushers, particularly Trey Hendrickson, really good pass rusher, has given Dan Moore some fits over the last couple of seasons. Dan Moore and Broderick Jones, neither one of those guys played well. In fact, they both were really, really bad against the Colts. 14 pressures, 4 sacks allowed between both of them. Going to need a much better performance from those guys, but you can run at Hendrickson. That one you can. He is a really good pass rusher. He plays with a lot of energy, really hot motor, but you can't run at him because he doesn't necessarily play the run nearly as well as he rushes the passer. Sam Hubbard, a little more of a balanced guy, but not. He's just more of like a role player in my eyes. One of the things to keep in mind, Miles Murphy had a sack last time these two teams played, and Murphy's been playing some good ball over the past month. I really feel like he's coming on. 21-year-old out of Clemson, late first-round pick. He's going to be a player for them here in the next couple of seasons. Definitely a guy to watch for that. We already know about their linebackers. This kind of linebacker core has been the staple of this defense, I feel like, for quite a while now. Jermaine Pratt, Logan Wilson. Pratt's kind of the guy that I feel like has always played the Steelers really well in terms of stopping the run. If there is a guy who's showed up in that category over the past couple of seasons, it's been Pratt. Logan Wilson, he's a guy who generates a lot of turnovers, but I do feel like you can get after him a little bit in coverage. I know he has the kind of the moniker of the reputation of a good coverage linebacker, but I do feel like, even when the Steelers were throwing the ball down the field, I do feel like they were able to get him a little bit in space with Fryer moves. So that's something to keep an eye on as well. So, I'm really interested to see how this matchup plays out. It's going to be a fun one. I have picked the Steelers. I picked the Steelers last week to get back on the right track. I really felt like they were going to be able to take advantage of Minshew's kind of chaotic tendencies. And I know that, the Steelers game against the Bengals, a month ago or whatever, was probably the best that the offense has looked all season long. Over 400 yards for the first time in however many games in their first one. I can't in good faith pick the Steelers to win this week because I just don't think the defense is playing well enough. In order for the Steelers to win, the defense has to play at a really high level, and they're just not doing that right now. And it's really unfortunate. A lot of discussion about the offense, which has been terrible all season long, the quarterback play, which has also been pretty poor all season long. But the Steelers' kind of method of winning is winning the turnover battle and the defense just being good. If over the last 2 seasons, when the Steelers have allowed more than 20 points, I think they're like 1-10, 1-11 win-loss record. I just don't know if they have enough firepower on the defensive side of the ball right now without Minka, the linebacker situation being what it is, Indianapolis, other teams exposing that, especially in man coverage, red zone area, stuff like that. I just don't know if there's enough right now on that side of the ball. And I would love to have enough faith just in the front, the edge rushers to get after it. But, Alex Highsmith, we saw like really quiet week last week. If the edge rushers don't dominate and you take care of the football, you can get after this Steelers defense. It just is what it is. You can run on them a little bit. But I do think, the Steelers' best bet, again, make Cincinnati one-dimensional. They're still going to see the same kind of sort of game plan, I feel like, with them. But this is, like I said, it's do or die time. Kind of, I said last week was a loser leaves town matchup. The season is officially on life support. If they lose this one, there's not really any coming back from that. So you're gonna need 10 wins to get into the postseason, especially with the outcomes of last week of those games. So, just kind of a quick rant too. I know some people have been asking me on Twitter about this. I do feel like that if Kenny Pickett is healthy, and keyword is healthy enough to go over the next 2 weeks, regardless of the result of this game, even if they lose and are effectively, not eliminated but really eliminated from the playoffs, I do feel like he should play. That's just my own personal opinion. I think that that experience is invaluable, but I really think more than anything else, I just think that every snap that he's on the bench is a missed opportunity to evaluate what he is as a quarterback, and that's the big question mark. Going forward, we can talk about all these different decisions that the Steelers are going to have to make and what direction this franchise is headed after kind of a disappointing, second half of the season here down the stretch. But they've got to figure out the quarterback position. Is he the guy? Is he not the guy? If he is going to be the guy heading into the season, like the unquestioned starter going into the year, what does that look like? What do they need on offense? What do they need to surround him with? What type of coordinator do they need to bring in? What type of offense is he capable of running at a high level? So all those questions, the more information that you have, I always think that that's beneficial, right? Like the more sample size, for the greater good. So that's just my take on it. And obviously, I don't think he should play if he's not healthy. Like if his ankle is preventing him from to where he can't make any plays with his legs, or he can't get out of harm's way if a defender is like barreling down on him in the pocket and he can't even like scramble out and extend the play, then you don't want him playing in that scenario, because then you're putting him in danger of getting hurt, either with the ankle or taking a huge hit and getting hurt in the pocket. So, but I think if he's healthy, he should play. That's just my opinion. You guys can let me know in the comments if you guys disagree with that. As always, I will be back with a recap. We have our very first NFL draft film room coming up. I think I'm going to drop that on Monday. I recorded it today. Excited about that one for you guys. Like I said, it's draft season for me. I've been in full swing, really digging into tape on some prospects. I've got to get a schedule or kind of ideas. I've got some ideas in my head on how we're going to go about draft season on the channel for Steelers Now, all that stuff. But I'm really excited for that. I do want to enjoy the next 3 weeks just because, football season is, my really only hobby. So I want to take advantage of these games that still matter. I'm still hopeful that the Steelers can, turn things around here, make a miraculous run at the playoffs. I'm no longer as optimistic just based on some of the things that have transpired over the past couple of weeks. I'm sure you guys probably in some ways feel the same way. So as always, I appreciate you guys. Like the video, subscribe, turn on notifications, drop me a comment, all that stuff. You guys enjoy the game tomorrow. Enjoy your week. And if I don't, I will see you guys before the holiday. Enjoy your holidays. Merry Christmas.